Hi, I'm Brian Moran, founder of Government CIO. Welcome to Government CIO Magazine.
Hello and welcome to Government CIO Magazine. Today we're sitting down with the Chief Technology Officer at the Department of Labor, Hamid Uyashi.
I have to say that I'm not aware of that having been part of our acquisition process. I think it is not an acquisition issue. The thing is that for us, acquisition still lags behind where we want to be as far as IT is concerned, and it's part of the 25 points that the OMB has pointed out as needing revamping and restructuring. We're still tied to the budget cycle. We're still tied to the fiscal year, kind of end of fiscal year kind of expenditure cycle. But there is, using the cloud as an example, for instance, we are moving to migrate our email to the cloud. The GSA BPA has, it's not BPA, it's an RFP, has 5 laws. One for email, one for collaboration, one for records management. But our focus is first on the first law. We're just going to migrate email to the cloud. Since we're not taking on the whole sort of suite, we're going to focus on email first, create a platform, and then from there move on to the next. So part of, you can view that a little bit as agility, is we don't want to take the whole enterprise, but we're just taking a piece of it. But again, I wouldn't say that that's building Agile into the acquisition. I think we still need to do that. And how do you do, for instance, acquisition when you don't have explicit requirements that your acquisition team is going to demand from you before you go out, because they're going to say, how are you going to evaluate? So doing a statement of objectives, for instance, is something that can drive Agile, type acquisitions, where you're not saying, you say, I don't really know all the details of what I want. I have an idea of what I want. Here it is. Let the vendor community come back to you with some more concrete proposals. But then you have to struggle with how you're going to evaluate and compare apples to apples if the responses are. So it's going to take some creative thinking around acquisition. But I think statement of objectives would be the first place to start. But we're doing that on our own. And another agency is going to do the same thing on its own. So if there were a place where we all can go and benefit from GSA's experience, I think would also give us a leg up, and I think a good starting point for our own effort to migrate email to the cloud. That's something that OMB can foster. Start small, stay small, and that's the nutshell of it. In other words, we had when we wanted to launch the data catalog, we had many requests. Everybody wanted to see this, wanted to see that. So we couldn't respond to everyone. So we decided exactly like you would do in the agile type development, create a backlog. Here are the user stories. Here's the backlog of user stories, and here are the 5 or 6 user stories that we're going to deliver as part of the release 1. And then after that, you go back and reassess your backlog, whether that's still backlog, those user stories are still, part of what you want to deliver next. Obviously, things change. So it's accounting for 2 things. One is you can't deliver everything at once. And second, that what you might plan on delivering might change, and it's okay. It's okay to sort of go and scrap a user story or a requirement, if you want to call it, and then come up with another requirement because you got, additional intelligence or additional knowledge that allows you now to sort of refine that requirement, or simply say this requirement is no longer something you want to do. You want to do something different. So flexibility, starting small and staying small, and active involvement of all involved, from the leadership to the developer. Administrative and bureaucratic, to be candid. Getting the data and understanding the data and developing the metadata around the data were the most difficult things we had to do. There was no practice of transparency in the department in terms of releasing data to the public. So there was an initial reluctance to sort of release this data on part of some agencies. So we had to sort of drive the value of openness and sort of work with the agencies to understand the benefit of making this data available, not only in terms of simply FOIA, but also in terms of marketing what they do. And then there is a value in showing to the public, this is what the Department of Labor does, and here is how it benefits you. Then the other thing was understanding the data, because the data is collected from an administrative point of view. It has a meaning within DOL's enforcement practices. It does not have a meaning outside of those practices. So for the general user, what does a wage and hour inspection mean? So giving that meaning is still something actually we're working on, because metadata, I think, is very weak across many federal agencies, as you know. And it's always contextual. It's driven. It's an internal view of the data rather than an external view of the data. So working on that external view of the data is still a challenge, but we're working on it small piece by piece. Well, after building exactly the platform, the enforcement database platform, we also leveraged, also built what we can call the developer's corner and built APIs. And then we said, this is the perfect time now to say, here is the data, here are the APIs, do with it what you please. So we created an initial competition using data from OSHA as well as wage and hour, focusing on 3 industries: the hotel industry, the restaurant industry, and the retail industry. And then we said to the developers, mash it up with any data you see fit, and show us what you can do. We received 11 application submissions, and we're in the process actually of evaluating them. There's some really good, promising applications. And I think what we want to do with that is simply see, the idea that government data isn't just boring tables and spreadsheets and acronyms that you can't make sense of. That actually government data can help you. It can be usable in your day-to-day. Actually, you're going to a restaurant, you're trying to find out whether that restaurant has any violations, and what's the Yelp review as well. You can see that. You're going to a retail store, you want to buy a pair of sneakers, you want to know whether there are any fair labor, grievances filed against that, that store or that brand. You can find that. So it is data that can be usable and integrated into people's daily lives, and that's what ultimately we want.